Every day we ask first responders to go into dangerous environments in the performance of their duty. A police officer we work with in the Northeast a couple years ago was clearing an attic. As he climbed up into the darkness, a suspect stepped out of the shadows and shot him 3 times in the face. And first responders go into this kind of danger every single day. But the tools that should help them, like robots and drones and fancy cameras, don't, because they're too expensive, they're too hard to use, and they're unrealistically large and bulky to carry into these environments. So what we've developed is a throwable omnidirectional camera that you can toss through a window, yeah, sure, and get a 360 view of a space instantly on your smartphone. And how does that work? Traditional cameras see the world through a straw with a limited field of view. We capture video in all directions at the same time, giving complete situational awareness. And you can deploy that by throwing it through a door. You can put that on a pole and stick it up into a crawl space or attic so that the officer in our first story would never have been surprised, would have seen everything in 360 with infrared illumination. You can stick it on a tether, and you can see in all directions in a collapsed building after a major earthquake, or in this case, you can clear an entire stairwell by looking up, down, left, right. Everything in all directions, recorded in all directions, with multiple team members looking in different ways.
Inside housing units or hostage situation in confined space, we're not going to be able to see in there. By deploying this camera, it's going to allow us to see into an area before we actually send people in.
There's nothing that I've seen in my career that would even compare to that sort of life-saving knowledge. When you already have an image in your mind of what the inside of the target address is, where the suspect may be, you cannot replace that in any capacity, I think, with any other technology I've seen.
We think this is an exciting $5 billion market with a common problem across safety, security, defense. And we already have marquee customers in each of these verticals. We've started with a focus primarily on law enforcement, and we have customers all over the country. But we yesterday had the privilege to meet with Detective Kiefer of Buffalo SWAT, who told us, "Your camera left me speechless. Civilian and police lives will be saved with this technology." But we know we can't do it alone, so we've recently tied up with some of the biggest distributors of police products in the United States and Canada. And as we integrate 4G into that device in 2017, our partnership with Verizon will allow us to leverage their 1,800-person public safety sales force. That's not all. We think we can add a lot of value to the consumer VR space, in part because we can help accelerate the processing of imagery in those devices, but also because we can give a unique perspective. Our imagery is stabilized. So what you'll see in the upper right is what a normal camera would see if you threw it off a bridge. And then in the main screen, you'll see what our stabilized view of this virtual bungee jump looks like. So you can imagine why someone who would want to use a GoPro or another action camera in these kinds of environments would want to use this, and we're already talking to OEMs in the camera space about how to incorporate that. And what it allows us is a combination of hardware and software. It's very hard to replicate. Developed by a team at the Harvard Innovation Lab with decades of experience in hardware and software development, plus domain experience of FBI agents and police officers. We've been recognized for innovation in a range of fora, most importantly, through a $1 million grant from the Verizon Powerful Answers program. And we started shipping these fellas in about the end of July. We're about $250,000 in revenue for this year, and we'll be at $1 to $2 million next year, so that's going pretty well. We've already raised $2.5 million from a great group of investors, and so we only need a very little bit more to get to financial sustainability and a little bit more to push beyond that. So what do we offer Buffalo? We offer a sustainable competitive advantage, a product that can't just be replaced by the next killer app, that has eager customers and a distribution network, that brings manufacturing jobs in final assembly to downtown Buffalo, and new economy employment in app development and image processing. And that finally has a real-world impact and lets us help first responders like Thomas Barilari here at Amherst Police, who yesterday we also got to meet and said, "I can truly say the Bounce Imaging Ball is one of the most technologically innovative products I have seen in law enforcement in 15 years, including the reasonableness of the price. I believe it will be a vital addition to any police department. Thanks for your time.
Great presentation. Great job. Anybody joining you? Okay, we'll start the questions. Erica?
So I love the product and it's so innovative. Since you're starting off with a focus on the police market, what's the sort of estimated market opportunity there, size of the market opportunity?
Sure. So there's two sort of phases in that, and that's what most police products go through. The market opportunity for SWAT is about 60,000 officers across the U.S., and then the overall opportunity is about $1 billion and a half dollars. And so what you'll see in these products is they'll first penetrate the tactical teams, and then they'll get broader deployment as they see the utility, particularly because we're at a similar price point to like tasers or LPR, a lot of things that are already in broad deployment.
What is your price point and what's your margin?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're at about $2,800 for our lower end product, and that's about a 70% gross margin. That compares to what they'll pay for their rifles or for fancier tasers, that kind of stuff, and compares to like a pull camera that will cost them $10,000.
Teresa?
And do you think you can run down the cost curve over time?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a very...
And that's when you jump into the consumer, you start in the...
Yeah, and in particular in the consumer space, we're looking to partner with folks that already know that space pretty well, already build lots of cameras and have extra knowledge in that DFM price reduction stuff, yeah.
Teresa, and then we'll go to Mark.
So I have a couple of practical questions.
Sure.
With that price point, how many units would a typical SWAT team have, and are the individual officers each carrying one? How do they know when to carry one, and is it carried on their person? Because they have just a certain amount of real estate available with all the other things that they're required to strap on these days. How is...
Absolutely. So that's a dead-on question. So we've built this so it straps right to their MOLLE, which is their overall kit, with their pouch, so they can have one with them in each situation. So like the U.S. Marshals team in Newark will have 6 of these units on their team with them, as an example. But when we're talking with other departments, they'll put these at the squad car level, because more and more frontline police officers are being asked to go in first. And so we've developed something that fits well with their kit and goes into their go bags that they're now deploying. Yes. Yeah, so it blasts 240 watts of infrared light that's visible to the cameras, but not to you and me.
Okay, we got a lot of questions. Mark, I got you lined up here, so Coolji, you next.
Yes, question around defensibility. Are your patents being filed on hardware and software, the combination of the two? What are you doing in that front?
Yeah, so we have 3 issued. One around the image processing, which it's a sort of a different branch of image processing that doesn't use feature matching. So it's kind of a pretty unique approach to image processing. Then around the hardware, basically we need to simultaneously sync. It's not actually 6 cameras. It's one 6-eyed camera. And so it's around the synchronization of these things perfectly with each other and with an IMU so that you get that nice stabilized image. And then one around sort of communications, that integration.
Coolji.
I have 2 questions, actually. One is how rugged is a camera? What if someone shoots at it? And the second one is what happens to the data from the camera? Is it being tied into the RMS and CAT systems?
Sorry, into the
records management system for law enforcement?
Yeah, so 2 answers to that. The first about ruggedness, we exceed the mil spec significantly. We drop these things 26 times from 7 feet under concrete, so we whack them. However, if you shoot it, the same thing will happen to it as anything that gets shot with a bullet for the most part. But the good thing is, if somebody's trying to shoot a rolling ball going through a room, they're not looking at the door. And so that's a pretty important, it breaks what they call the OODA loop for the person inside and gives a tactical advantage to people outside. It's also really hard to shoot a little rolling ball. And then to your question about where the data goes, we currently store it on, police were very specific about this, we don't store it on the device, we store it on the receiver in case that has to go into evidence. And then we push that into the cloud. It's an option to push it into the cloud to store it in GovCloud in AWS, which is like a certified protected space for that. Yeah.
Chris, do you have a question? Did you have a question? No. Nicole? Go ahead.
So just wondering if you have any pilot cases you can kind of talk about in terms of uses, not necessarily just from very stressful events or these things, but how often are you seeing that these police forces are using it? Maybe even getting back to Teresa's point about how many devices per team, right? How often are you seeing that they're using it and even using the software, after the event?
Yeah, so it depends on the departments have very varied sort of op tempos. And so like when we're working with Orange County sheriffs or Redlands or Riverside out in LA, they will be doing this, they'll be doing raids like this a couple times a week, both for warrant searches and for fugitive searches. And you'd be surprised how often people are waiting up in the attic or in the basement, that kind of thing. So with some frequency. A smaller town like Bellevue, Nebraska may have just a few call-outs during the year. But the point is that there's many tools like this that are kept for the emergency situation, right? And what Patrol is learning is that when there's a school shooting or when there's a terrorist event, it's no longer acceptable for them to sit outside and secure
time.
and wait for SWAT to show up.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.